All right. Hi, everyone. On behalf of STMA, welcome to this week's virtual town hall meeting. We would like for this to be an interactive experience, so if you have a question or something to share, please use the chat feature to type a question. The chat is located along the bottom of the screen and it will pop up in the participant panel. You can also raise your hand, and when you are called upon, you can speak to our panelists live. The raise hand feature is located at the bottom right of the participant panel. Your moderator today is Ryan DeMay from Columbus Recreation and Parks Department. So thank you all for joining us.
Kristen, thank you very much, and welcome to everybody. Welcome to our panelists. Really quickly, I'd like to introduce them. Today joining us, we've got Trevor Otters, a certified sports field manager from the city of Las Vegas, Nevada. Travis Sales, Director of Parks and Recreation in the city of Rockwall, Texas, and then John Wagnon, who's a certified sports field manager for the city of Franklin, Tennessee. So today, obviously, we're focused on Parks and Rec. We tried to get a panel that was mostly focused on those folks that have returned to play here in the last several weeks or last month or so, try to get their perspective on what's going on in the current state of affairs in their operations. So again, our goal is to share information and learn about this in real time, how everybody's adapting to this changing environment, learning how other sports field managers are planning for what might lie ahead and dealing with those situations as well. So no matter what segment of the industry you might be in, we hope that you can learn something from this and have some takeaways. So we do ask, as Kristen said, for this to be interactive, for you to participate, use the raise hand feature located down in the chat section. And please feel free to ask those questions. And if you do want to talk, we can also acknowledge you on video and audio for those questions. So our ground rules real quick for our panelists. We do our best to stay apolitical in this environment. Try not to predict the future, but we will discuss, different scenarios of what might lie ahead. And we recognize that we might not have the right answers right now, but we do want to share questions and our thoughts as much as possible. So with that said, just again want to thank our panelists, thank STMA, Kristen and Kim for all their hard work in putting this together. So, Trevor, we'll kind of kick off with you here. Can you give us a current snapshot of the status of your facility for your athletes and your customers that stands today? How long have you been open to this point?
Well, parks as a whole in Las Vegas never actually shut down totally. A lot of our amenities were closed, including our sports fields for a long time. We had to go so far as to take basketball rims off the backboards and everything, closed playgrounds, other things. So the parks were basically used as walking paths, you could say. That being said, we noticed a 10 times increase in the number of people actually in our parks, even though the majority of our facilities weren't being used. Sports fields opened under governor's directive about 2 weeks ago. Only adult use so far. No youth activities have gone on. No city activities. Only outside soccer leagues, mainly adult have been playing. And we've kind of liked the downtime, but in the other aspect of it, when you have a park such as the one I'm situated at, where during the middle of the week we're used to maybe 100 people in the park, we see 700 people in the park at any given time. They're actually setting records with the amount of people that come into this facility on a daily basis. So that's changed our philosophies as well on what we have to do. We do everything from open the bathrooms in the morning, get them clean and stocked, to emptying the trash. At a normal sports facility, we could do that once a week, with downtime like this, but with the traffic, we're now doing that on a daily, if not 2 or 3 times a day. So it's a little difficult. We're expecting some youth play very soon. We've actually increased the length of our seasons. Being out in Vegas, it starts to get hot a whole lot earlier. So youth baseball, which was canceled for the season, Little League, they would normally be ending actually a couple weeks ago. So they actually canceled the rest of their season. Youth soccer, the same way. Most of the stuff is done by the early mid-June. We've extended their allocations for our fields, but we don't know if or how many people are actually going to come back. So most of the time during the summer, it's nice. Our box fields, we get to shut them down for about 3 or 4 months. rehab them, and then go back to overseed in the fall.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And Travis, in your position, you're at a little bit higher level, maybe in seeing some of the programming challenges that Trevor alluded to. What have you seen as you guys have opened back up as far as returning groups and maybe any attrition for whatever reason?
Well, I can definitely vouch for everything that he said. We're doing the same thing. We reopened on June 2nd to begin practices. We canceled our spring season and did away with that totally. The thing that we're seeing right now is we had a lot of complaints about closing initially, and now that we're open back up, we're not seeing anybody really practicing. We normally have 20 to 30 scheduled practices a night, and we've been averaging 1 to 2. Our first tournament is scheduled for this weekend. We're hosting the USSSA State Championships, one of the age divisions, and supposedly there's like 170 teams signed up for it, and we're going to do one of the age divisions. Now, we're just a host site. It's being hosted by Baseball Nation, which we sort of contract with. But yeah, we're seeing a very, very slow return. And we even sent out an email to our coaches just asking sort of because what we had decided to do, instead of having a summer league, we decided to have a tournament schedule this summer and have a tournament every weekend, and then go back to fall baseball in October. And we sent out a flyer saying, hey, if we start having tournaments every weekend, who's going to participate, and if you're not, tell us the reasons why. And we have like over 100 coaches. We got 17 responses. Most of them were, no, we're not going to participate, either from it's too hot, not sure about COVID yet, we're playing somewhere else. So it's been sort of odd as far as the return, because we've heard so many requests to please open the fields back up, please open the fields back up. Now we're open and there's nobody there, which I do understand. And right now we're pushing 115 degrees as far as feels like temperatures, and it's supposed to be like that for the next couple of weeks. So after not being outside for 3 months, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, there's definitely an being acclimated to the climate and getting used to that for sure. So, John, what are you seeing down there? I mean, how long have you guys been open? And, are you seeing some of the same things? And as far as attrition, and how's that maybe impacted the way that you guys are going about your work with your crew in the fields and whatnot?
Yeah, so we're starting week 3 of practices this week. Same thing like Trevor and all of them. We had to take basketball goals down. We had to strand wrap playgrounds. We had to lock down our tennis courts, lock down our skate parks. Basically, we were just anything that was not in a fence was open. We closed down all of our bathrooms. Same thing. Right now, the only thing that is closed is basketball. We still have not put up basketball nets. Our playgrounds are actually scheduled to open tomorrow. Our guys have been putting all the swings, doing all the safety checks that requires for that. So playgrounds will officially be open tomorrow. We have allowed practices. Like I said, this is our 3rd week of practices only, just to get the teams back. We have a lot of travel teams that are still wanting to play tournaments, need to get out. So we haven't fully released them for games yet because of how our quads are with the 50-person rule. Our thought was, well, you got potentially 30 players between the 2 teams, the umpires, the coaches. So who's going to regulate what 10 parents, get to be there? Who's going to tell grandma and grandpa they can't come watch their kid play? So we backed off on games. We were supposed to have a tournament Father's Day for the same reason, not knowing what our limitations would be. We went ahead and moved it back. But other than that, our staff, we've got to keep our staff. That was a different, challenge in itself. But we're hoping to start games hopefully next week, as long as our city administrator, approves it. So everything goes through our city administrator. as far as what we can and can't do on a weekly basis. So we're on a weekly basis right now, staying up to standards with the CDC, recommendations.
No, that makes sense. And we just had a question come in here from Brian Kohler, and he asked, from each of you, have you had to make any adjustments to your passive recreation fields or the way you're maintaining open spaces? And I guess, that kind of goes into, we're all getting ready to get back and going here. So how have you guys each handled the surge of, hey, we've got to take care of everything we normally do, plus we've got to get playgrounds ready, or we have to make sure that, we're sanitizing and cleaning things more frequently. How have you guys dealt with that? Travis, start with you. What have you seen in that regard?
Well, as far as park maintenance, we've been pretty much doing our normal maintenance, but sanitizing has been the big one. We sanitize all park amenities, playgrounds. We've got a hospital grade sanitizer that we put in 5-gallon backpack sprayers. We soak the entire playground down, water fountains, picnic tables. We do that once a week. And we're in the process, we're building, because right now you couldn't rent a hand washing station or buy one anywhere. So we've started, we came up with a design. We've made our own hand washing stations that we're going to have at special events and at baseball games. We're going to have them scattered throughout. But I would say the anomaly has been just doing our normal work, but being a sanitizing crew at the same time. And touch points and just everything that's a touch point, trying to clean it as much as possibly can.
Sean, how about you? How have you maybe scaled back or done the same thing with your passive and open spaces and geared up for COVID response?
So I'm pretty fortunate. We're split up into crews. So I have a crew. They touch nothing but athletic surfaces. We got a crew that does facilities. I mean, that's all that they do is clean facilities. We have what's called our commons ground crew. What the athletic crew does takes care of inside the fences. The common crew takes care of outside the fences. So we really haven't had to deal much with that directly because we already had crews established for those areas. But our facilities crew, we put hand washing stations. We actually built our own. So at all of our bathrooms, porta-johns, playgrounds, entrances to tennis courts, entrances around the fields now, we have it looks like a little four-way hand sanitizer station that, they get refilled. They get checked daily. Not necessarily they get refilled daily, but they get checked daily. Bathrooms cleaned daily. The playgrounds will be cleaned, sprayed on a routine basis as well. All of our dog parks have that same system as well. So as far as on the athletic side, it hasn't impacted us because that crew still deals with the fields, and our facilities crew, deals with all of the cleaning side of it.
Makes sense. For sure, that's a fortunate position to be in, I think, with everything that's going on. So, Trevor, it sounds like you wear a lot more hats in your role. So what have you seen and how has that gone as far as maintaining the park and then also being able to get things ready and respond to that scale up?
Well, the changes happened, when this all started a couple months ago. Directives and changes were happening on the hourly. It seemed like we were going to do this, and then next week the next day we come in and prepare to do whatever it is you were told to the day before, and that would get changed. So we started out, I think in the city we have, I think the number was 87 playgrounds, something like that. And we were supposed to go out and sanitize those playgrounds twice a day. That's almost impossible with, we'd be doing it nonstop. That's all we would be doing. And so the decision was made the next day, okay, we're just going to caution tape them off. And then it was like, we can just put chains over the top of the basketball rims and no one will play. And we'd come in the next day and those chains were down. People were going to find a way. So it was like, all right, take off the rims. We were fortunate to have, to have extra help come in and help us sanitize our parks and our other areas. There were some divisions and departments within the city who were not deemed quote unquote essential. So a healthy parks program was started, and those employees were allowed to come in groups of 4, 5, and 6, almost like a crew, and go to different parks throughout the day, travel around, sanitize everything that they possibly could, actually pull some trash for us, pull some weeds for us. They did excellent work. We're happy that they're going back to their full-time positions, but we're sad to see them go. But in respect, we had to glance away from our sports fields, unfortunately, and look towards the common areas of our parks a little bit more. Not to say that put us behind, because we didn't have anyone, on our fields, but it was definitely challenging. It's still ongoing, but we realized we can only put up caution tape around playgrounds every so often. We can't do it on an hourly basis, and it gets torn down, and then what do you do?
Yeah, I think that's the whole name of the game. There's only so much that we can all do and control in this whole situation, and a lot of it's out of our control for sure. So, our next topic was, John, something you brought up, and I'll start with you, but what have you been told, or what is your staff responsibilities, to monitor and enforce the COVID-19 protocols and policies in your facilities? What's in place right now as far as your responsibility, and then how are you instructing your staff and training them on how to handle those situations and conversations?
As far as, the biggest thing that we watch for, like what I tell my guys all the time is, we're not, police officers. We don't go around, we have the whole dog leash law, but when you have a 200-acre park and someone's walking their dog off leash, I don't tell my guys to get off the mower and, go tell them to put their dog on leash. So same thing with that. Unless there were big groups, people just blatantly defying what was supposed to be done, we really didn't do much. We locked all of our fields because we knew that if we left a field unlocked, there would be the pickup games, there'd be the backyard games. So we did as much proactive stuff, keeping facilities, athletic fields locked up. So the biggest thing the guys had to do was just focus on their jobs, by locking the bathrooms, helping our facilities crew out, by getting porta johns. We deferred that job over to the cleaning company, our rental company for that. So basically it was just, monitoring, making sure stuff was staying locked, signs. The biggest thing with this is it seemed like every day we were having to make new signs for something, because something would change with the recommendations. So that was probably our hardest part, was just working around fenced in areas, locked areas that we're not normally used to working around, but changing signs out. I think we changed signs every week as something different, but it had to be changed for policy, or just to protect ourselves, as far as that. But as far as policing and stuff, we didn't, like I said, unless there was big groups, we kind of let people be themselves, do their own thing, because you got individuals. We don't have time to go everybody.
For sure. Trevor, what about you with folks coming back in? What are you telling your staff as far as, if, it seems like there's been more onus that's been placed on park agencies to make sure that this stuff is being enforced, and we're kind of being put into a situation where we might have to police some of this stuff. So what have you told your staff, and what have you been told by the powers that be there in Vegas?
Well, we're kind of in the same situation as John said. We are not the park police. We have Las Vegas deputy city marshals that are our own police force besides Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. We haven't had that many situations of people. Most of our fields we are able to lock. Some of our little league size fields, may only have a 3 or 4 foot fence. So I walk into a complex, I see a dad out there with his 2 sons playing catch, maybe hitting a couple balls. I walk up and the first thing they say is, "Are you kicking us off?" I said, "No, I'm not." but if a marshal comes through here, he may. Now, same thing, 2 hours later, I come by and there's a full-on scrimmage or a full-on game going on, or a coach has got his 15 kids out on a ball field. I'm going to tell them you got to go, but it's kind of a case-by-case scenario. I tell my people to be smart. Don't get into any altercations. We don't need that right now. It's just something else we don't need to get into. So we haven't had too much. You do see some people. It's kind of like the rules are flexible, but we try not to do, keep your head down. We've got enough to handle. If you see a group of 12 having a barbecue, so be it. They know what the rules are. They know what the laws are, but it's not our place to really go and interject. So,
Travis, obviously with, more than just fields to worry about, and with that tournament that's coming in there, what are you going to tell your folks preparing for a big organized group coming into the park, and what their responsibility is to maintain guidelines or uphold those policies?
Well, we're putting the initial responsibility on Baseball Nation, which is the one hosting the tournament, and they have a set of guidelines that are laid out that are pretty stringent. That if a team is caught blatantly violating any of the Open Texas guidelines, that they will be ejected from the tournament, and that'll be the end of their tournament. We're going to have a liaison on site just to sort of monitor and watch with this first tournament, make sure that they are enforcing the rules as stated. We've had like 16 executive orders from the governor over the past 2 months. So I agree with everything they're saying. We're constantly having to change what might have been okay or you couldn't do 2 days ago, now you can do. We've probably got about 350 social distancing signs up throughout all our parks. If you go into any of our facilities indoors, we have hand sanitizer every 20 feet as you walk through the building, just reminders. But we're pretty much following the Open Texas. The governor sends out this Open Texas guidelines, and it has recommendations. And like this is the one for youth sports, and it has recommendations for the operator of the sports facility, and then it has recommendations for the participant. And we sent that to all of our coaches and just told them we would expect them to adhere to the guidelines. But like the other two gentlemen said, we're not going to be out there policing that. If we see something very blatant, we will definitely say something. Early on, when we first did the shutdown, just like them, we locked every facility that could be locked. And, the next day we caught whole baseball teams on a field, and we'd go up and, hey, how did you get in? Well, we jumped the fence. That lasted for a couple of days, and then we really haven't had any more issues. But this weekend will definitely be, I guess, our learning experience moving forward.
Now, no doubt with that many people coming in. So James Bergdahl chimed in the chat here about they finally just had some signs made that said, quote unquote, park amenity not sanitized, use at your own risk. So kind of putting the onus and responsibility on the people that are out there using it. So, from that standpoint, how do each of you, Travis, we're here with you right now, but how do you intend to handle any pushback? Somebody says, I don't want to wear a mask, or I don't want to, socially distant or be socially distant from this, this other group or something like that. Do you guys have any plans for how to deal with that pushback in the moment?
Right now, we're applying everything as a guideline, because if you read the rules, it doesn't say it. You must adhere. It says these are the best practices. So we're just going to monitor, see how things go. But like I said, we sort of put this in the tournament operators' hands right now, and they've got a set of guidelines that, they're prepared to eject a team if things were to get too out of hand. But until we sort of encounter that internally, I'm not sure how much we'd push back. We're pretty much taking the stance that if you want to come to our facilities, you're welcome to wear a mask. The guidelines recommend a mask, but if you do not want to wear a mask, that's fine. I'm sure everybody's getting the same thing. We've got half the people saying that we should have never closed and that everything should just be normal. And then we've got the other half saying we shouldn't be opening anything. So it's sort of a double-edged sword regardless of what we do.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think that's the interesting part of seeing how these groups come back and commingle and get back in there of how much, we might need to push or not. So,
Correct.
Trevor, so what have you seen, with your, it sounds like it's still pretty passive and not so much organized use, but anything as far as, it doesn't sound like you're gonna have additional wear and tear, but ways that you've had to adjust agronomically to, you thought you were going to ramp up and have a lot of people out there, and now you're not. So what's that look like for you agronomically right now?
It actually worked out fantastic. We were able to transition our fields a whole lot earlier. We got some good hot temps in May, and decided to burn out all of our rye on our overseeded fields, and give ourselves another month and a half of growing some Bermuda. So nice. That was absolutely fantastic. The fields are looking good. I did have one project that I'd been planning on, resprigging 2 soccer fields at one of my facilities. I've been planning on a year on that, doing all my practices, planning. This is what I need to do. This is how we're going to go through overseed this year. When this all hit, budget restraints also hit. And it was like, well, am I going to be able to do that? And it looks like, no, that's probably the first thing on the chopping block. And then I get a week later, we have the money. So then it's a wave of emotion. You can probably see, but we actually start that tomorrow. We'll be phrasing those 2 fields off, and our sprigs are coming in next Wednesday. So we're excited for that. But my fields are, for the majority, our fields are beautiful right now. We've had some excellent weather after a really cool spring and long cool spring. The temperatures have jumped up dramatically, and agronomically, our fields look fantastic right now. So I'm very, very pleased.
John, how about you? Where do you guys stand, and do you anticipate with more people coming out that changes your plans at all, or how do you sit today?
So I was very fortunate when all this started going down. I had a good heart-to-heart talk with my boss on, hey, just because fields are closing doesn't mean that, we're out of jobs. This was a good chance for us to get fields back up to where they need to be. We had already started some travel ball practices that started, 1st of February. So yes, we were overseeded, but, a month of coaches out there, we had a little bit of damage. So we took that time. We addressed problems that we would normally not be able to address. The only thing that I changed was when these restrictions hit, we cut our staff in half. We didn't lay anybody off, but all of our hourly guys went to an A crew or a B crew. So they would work a week, and then they would technically work a week from home, but everybody did not, nobody missed a paycheck. So where I went from, 6 guys a day, I went down to 3 guys a day. And I knew that if we stayed on our normal fertility maintenance program, we would never stay caught up mowing. So we looked at, and it was a lot more PGRs. We changed our fertility program to be more of a maintenance, friendly. A lot of PGRs, a lot of minors, not much nitrogen, because I knew that I could get the fields back to where they needed to be, but not push them so much that we had to mow 5 days a week. We were able to cut our mowing down to about twice a week. So that allowed us to, stay on top of our edging. We had a great time to go in, fix low spots on infields, get our mounds and plates back dialed in, because we knew that once this was over or coming over, that it was going to be floodgates. There's going to be people knocking on our doors, wanting to get back out, wanting to play. So we use this time to get a lot of stuff, get caught back up, like all of us in Parks and Recs. They're open 7 days a week. They don't necessarily look bad, but you can just tell they're just beaten. They're just beat down. We don't get the breaks that other people get. So these last 3 months have been an awesome time for us to get our grass back caught up ahead, so that when we do open back up, we ought to be stronger than we normally are at that time to try to stay ahead. So we were very fortunate, a lot of air fine, a lot of PGRs, and a lot of minor packages just to keep, the grass green. But we weren't necessarily trying to push it, like we normally do, where we're getting play 7 days a week and we're just trying to keep grass on the field.
No doubt. For sure. So Travis, what's that process been for you? You were closed, the fields had a rest. Now you're ramping up and you're getting ready to really kind of get back to full bore. What's that process look like for you?
Yeah, same way here. Our fields are probably in the best shape they've ever been in. We got to do a lot of things over the last 3 months we wouldn't normally get to do because the amount of play, daylight to dark, 7 days a week. We even, on one of our 8 field complexes, we even spent a full week using a Procore 648 greens aerator and aerated our fields, and did that in 2 directions, just things you would never be able to do during a normal season. Haven't made it to the point of PGRs, but we never really lost any staff. So, we've been mowing almost daily. And right now normally I would have fields that are severely worn after the spring season, struggling with the heat. And, most of our fields look like a golf course fairway right now. So, pretty fortunate in that aspect. So when we do start playing this weekend, participants ought to see some of the best playing conditions they've seen in a very long time.
That's awesome. We had a question come in here from Brian Kohler about, annual budgets are coming up depending on when your budget cycle falls, July 1 or January 1. But, John, starting with you, what changes or limitations do you foresee coming up regards to, say, hiring freezes or reductions in supplies, budgets, projects, all that kind of stuff?
So we did hit a hiring. I was actually in the middle of trying to hire another person, and we went all the way through, about halfway through the interviews is when it started hitting, and we were told, hey, the jobs that are open, we're going to go through, made it all the way to submitting my name to hire that person, and then they put the freeze on us. So we've been on a freeze for the last 4 weeks, and it's got to be a severe, somebody leave or a spot vacant for us to hire right now. From what we've heard, end of June is when we're going to start looking. As a park system right now, or just in our parks department, we're down 14 positions. And that's what we've been stressing is, hey guys, y'all want us to open up, you want all these facilities done, but you take 14 people and times that by 40 hours a week, we're down a lot of man hours right now. So we're hoping in June our freeze does get lifted. We did have one budget cut, but it was only minor. We had to cut about $200,000 out, but we were able to get that from a lot of extra fluff. So it didn't necessarily affect my big line items that I use, daily or weekly. It was like some, extra travel expenses. Once the traveling stopped, all those travel bans started, there was a bunch of money saved there. So we were able to find enough money elsewhere not to hurt any of our group's biggest line items. And that's kind of what we're seeing going into July. So we start July 1, our new budget. Some of those line items that you kind of have back there, but you don't use on a normal basis, have been cut a little bit, but nothing major out of our normal operating budget. Our PERs are going to be looked at, which is everything for us over 25,000. So equipment, whatever, if it's over 25, our PERs, those are going to be looked at now on a 1-by-1 basis. So from what we've been told is they're not cut fully, but you may not get it until January. They could come to us and November and say, hey, this thing you put in for 15, for 25,000, go spend it. Or depending on how, the economy's looking with stuff reopening and all that. So that's basically, we're hoping to get out of our hiring freeze. Our big purchases, PERs, are kind of put on a hold, but not, hopefully they don't totally. Same thing with projects. Anything we had big projects in there are, I've been told it could get cut, but they're hoping not to. So we're trying to do as much as we can to stay on track, stay where we need to be, because we know that you have that tidal wave effect. You start pushing things back, that tidal wave gets bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden, it's just going to swallow you up. We're trying to do the best we can, as far as that.
Travis, when's your budget cycle start, and where are you guys at as far as potential cuts, hiring freezes, projects on hold, capital equipment, that sort of thing?
Basically, our budget's October 1. We are just about to start having our one-on-one meetings with the city manager to discuss our budgets that we've already submitted. When this initially hit, we were told to go ahead and just any projects that may have been approved for the 2019-20 budget year, if they didn't have to be done at that moment, to pause them. We paused all spending sort of voluntarily, just to where we could see. Of course, anyone in the municipal government knows our sales tax numbers are about 2 months behind. So we're not going to really know the impact of the main portion of this until next month. I think the partial one we received, we were down about 4% in sales tax. I think we're probably looking at somewhere around 15% down for the main bulk of the stay at home. We've pretty much submitted a normal budget with the understanding that a lot of it may not get approved until we see these numbers come out next month. But no hiring freezes at this point. And we are expecting some low sales tax numbers. I know hotel taxes are down drastically. So, but we're pretty prepared for it. We've got a real good finance department and city management staff that has sort of prepared us for this. So I'm hoping things are not as bad as they could be, but it is very possible.
Trevor, how about your situation out there as far as budget cycle? When do you guys start, and where do things stand with some of those larger purchases and then your operating dollars?
We're kind of we're in a rough spot. This is Vegas. We do rely on a lot of that casino money, which has been zero coming in for a good while now. We hear a lot of different numbers between this fiscal year, which is ending June 30th, started the new one. So they're saying fiscal year 20, 21, and 22 could it be impacted citywide up to like $250 million. So that being said, the parks maintenance division, we were heading into March at about 8%. We were running about 8% under our budget. So we do have employee unions or employee associations here. We do pay for police, our own police. We do pay for fire. Everyone has kind of had to tighten the belt strings a little bit, and everything's still kind of in flux. We were in a frost before, and that went to a complete freeze. We have 3 or 4 irrigation spots that I know are open. I had a guy recently on one of my crews just retire a couple weeks ago. That leaves me with one guy for the entire northwest part of the valley here to do irrigation. So don't know when we're going to get them back. We don't know exactly what our budgets are going to look like. We're actually merging. We were under operations and maintenance, which includes fleet services, streets and sanitation. We are now moving departments, and we were going to go back, be under parks and recreation department. So that being said, monies get moved. Who's to say if a reorg is coming? Who's to say what exactly is coming? We're just trying to do the best with what we got, put in a PO, hope to God it gets approved and that you get your stuff. You know, I'm used to ordering things and getting them rather quickly. I had a $50 Staples order for some a stapler and some scissors and some Post-it notes, and it, you know, took me 2 weeks. It's got to get approved by about 4 or 5 different bosses now. So everything is a little bit different, and we're just kind of waiting to see how everything pans out.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of wait and see and wait and hope, you know, for that, to that matter. So, you know, kind of looking ahead there too, Travis, you know, I'll ask you first, but, you know, from going through this whole experience here over these last 3 months, you know, if there were to be some type of second wave of this thing, and who, you know, who's to say what kind of closures or whatever might be happening, but what have you taken away from this experience these last 3 months, and what might you apply here if there is something like that in the future to protect your staff and maintain your facilities?
Well, the first thing is we're just already sort of preparing for it. This, you know, we were blindsided the first time. This way, we're already ready. We know what worked, what didn't. I know a lot of the surrounding cities, the colleagues I deal with here in North Texas, you know, they tried to block off playgrounds with fencing and tape, which just got torn down. I know a lot of they tried to block off parking lots with barricades. They just moved the barricades and went anyway. So, you know, I did like a lot of y'all did. We put down the basketball rims. Therefore, you really couldn't play basketball. If it had a lock on it, we locked it up. All of that worked very well. Expect the complaints about things being locked. That's one thing that we know we're going to have, and expect probably a 50-50 mix of why is it locked and why haven't you locked more. But other than that, really just knowing that it is highly probable that we could have a second wave, and using the things that worked well and running with those. And the most important thing is just not being blindsided this time, being prepared for it.
That's a good point. Just the mindset, like you said, is a huge component of that for sure. So,
definitely.
Trevor, what about out there? It was a pretty, you mentioned like the casino shutting down and tourism being drastically impacted out there. You know, what do you think for your crew and your facilities? What would you do differently? What would you do the same? What have you learned through this whole process?
Yeah, I do know one thing. We have a fantastic purchasing agent here that works for us in parks, and she saw what was happening in China and then moving to Europe, and had the forethought to purchase a lot of PPE for us. We knew right away if this thing comes, you know, all of a sudden I had cases of masks show up, you know, at my office, and she's like, I got them just because we don't know if we're going to be able to get them. Gloves the same way, cases and cases and cases of latex gloves, all kinds of PPE that she stocked up without anyone having to tell her. It was fantastic. So we're going to try and keep those levels. Now I have to call and can I get some, you know, I have a couple females on my crew. Can I get some medium gloves? And she's like, we're only allotted 3 cases a week, but I'll get you what I can. I mean, it's just staying up on that type of stuff. You know, being a municipality, you have to take your orders from, you know, a mayor or from a city manager or whatever. So whether we like closing this stuff up or not, or what we're being told to do, we can disagree with it. And, you know, I've put my foot in my mouth a couple times here, but ultimately we have to go out and do it. We can say our remarks, but, you know, it's not up to us. Obviously, we've seen what our mayor has said on TV, and she's been behind some other, you know, municipalities in the area and different ways that they've handled it. Some of the parks and in some of the cities or county parks have shut completely down, and we've stayed open. I think it's a great thing. I think it definitely does prove that as, you know, turf managers or park professionals, that our parks really are essential, and that people will gather, and not necessarily gather, but they will flock to them. You get tired of your cul-de-sac or walking up and down your street, you want to see something fresh. I mean, there's some place to go. You might not be able to do anything there, but at least there is some place for them to go. And, you know, it's our duty basically to, to keep them looking nice for them. So
That's very fair. So, John, same thing. You mentioned kind of splitting your crew in half and some other things that you guys had to do to make it through. But what would you take away from this experience and save if anything were like this were to happen in the future?
I think the biggest thing that everybody's learned in our area is going to being a sports turf manager is you got to be flexible. On a normal basis, we're dictated by Mother Nature. We may have plans to come in and do this project one day, but it decides to rain or that's something that we can't control. Just like with this was something we cannot control, but it makes you think things out more ahead, as far as planning, but also being flexible to change at last minute notice. There was a lot of times I had some projects planned and all of a sudden my guys were getting called up because we got to go change signs at a park, or we got to go put up these new signs or lock this new facility, unlock this other facility. So I think the biggest thing that we've learned is being flexible and planning ahead with the whole purchasing stuff. I try to do all of my orders on a monthly basis, planning ahead so I can allow time for delays, whatnot. But, like if this comes back again, with the whole, you see mom and dad out in an area playing a game, you got to kind of be flexible to the rules, knowing that, hey, they're probably just trying to get out of the house. Maybe I shouldn't say something to it, but, stay into the standard of the big group, but knowing that us as a park staff, we're a release. People come to our parks to get away from normal everyday life. So, stressing the value to our city administrator was not hard because we already promote, health, being outside. We're over 1,200 acres as a park staff in the city limits with trails that connect to all of that stuff. So we already have a big priority as a park system to be out in it, but keeping it maintained, but not being too strict about it, because we knew that a lot of people that were coming to our greenways, they may be playing soccer or kickball in an area that we don't allow, but we kind of turned our head because that's the only spot only where they could do that stuff. We took away from them. So, being flexible in the sense that, hey, there's some stuff we do need to monitor, but we also got to realize that people are coming to get away and to, from their house or whatever, and they just want to be outside. And as long as they were doing what they should do, we didn't really say much or don't need to say anything. Is kind of the biggest thing that we've gotten is, being flexible and being willing to, to adjust on a daily basis.
No, I agree with that. The flexibility part and just going with the flow. That's been a really a tough learning experience at sometimes, but probably a necessary one if we're going to go through this again. So those are good points. Travis, a couple of questions for you. Especially with the position that you're in. Has there been any updating of any type of like emergency action plan regarding your pandemic response protocols? This is a question again from Mr. Brian Kohler out there. So have you guys done anything like that to formalize a policy on the pandemic response or anything like that if this would come up in the future?
Pretty much the Rockwall County Health Department, we all meet. They're sort of in charge of the pandemic response, and it gets all of the cities that are within Rockwall County together, the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, parks and rec, streets, and they are sort of the overseers of the emergency action plan.
Makes sense. And then another question for you, Travis, that came in from Greg Chorvis. When you went through the whole closure, I think this is what this is alluding to, but how much say did you have with your officials? I'm assuming that means city leadership and otherwise, as far as closing down, the reopening process, and maybe any other things that you would need, budget-wise or resource-wise to make that all happen?
They were really good. And, a lot of things that may have been suggested, and this is one reason I like these town hall meetings, and I've been on some of the STMA, some of the TRAPS ones, but getting to do dialogue with your colleagues and knowing what they've already done and did not work and what worked. So when ideas might have been thrown out that we might need to do this, I was able to say, well, colleague over on the west side of town has tried that, and this was the results. And they're really good about listening to things. And, as long as I was not trying to go against the governor's executive orders, I think they listened to us very well and listened to our input. And we came to a conclusion together, best way to proceed. Even though every bit of it was trial and error, you really did not know what was going to be successful and what was not going to be successful. But being able to have dialogue with your colleagues was a huge help, because I guarantee if somebody had already tried it and it either worked or failed, and then you could, why reinvent the wheel when there's so many people in our same positions?
Yeah, no doubt. And that's, you got a great segue into my next question. You basically just answered it. So I'll ask, your colleagues here on the panel of, these STMA town hall sessions, we really try to put a lot of thought into that aspect of it, is that it's, it's not necessarily pure education from the standpoint of an academic or a peer that's just educating you on a topic. It's more of just being able to collectively sit around this, this Zoom room and, hear what other people are doing and offer up feedback and everything like that. So, John, I'll ask you first. Is just, I don't know how many of these you've been able to attend, but from this experience here, what have you taken away from this? And, what kind of value did you see in interacting with your peers on this type of platform?
I think it's always beneficial. Being the president of our TV STMA, I've been on some other calls talking to the other presidents about what they were looking for. How do we keep our jobs essential? But anytime you're willing, or I guess I'm always willing to sit and listen and see what other people are doing. I think it's eye-opening. Some of the stuff that other states and cities were having to do that we weren't necessarily restricted with, it kind of puts it on, hey, maybe my job's not so great or not so bad after all, that we get to do stuff that other states aren't restricted by. So anytime you get to get with a group of people from different parts of the country and learn from them, just because they're not in your same area doesn't mean that the stuff that they do doesn't work. Maybe you take it and, adapt it to you. But I always enjoy getting with people from outside our little area and just learning from them. That's the day we stop learning is probably not a good day, because there's something you can learn every day. And then when you get to just broaden that area of who you get to learn from, just makes that more great, getting to talk with people in Texas, a little bit farther south than us, all the way on the West Coast, what they're doing. It kind of puts in perspective of what things do work and what things don't work.
No, that's good. Great points. And yeah, that perspective is a really important piece. So Trevor, how about you? Being involved with some of what we've planned here and all that, what have you seen? And what is your takeaway from being able to connect with your peers like this?
I think it's fantastic. I do have the privilege of sitting on the technology committee and watching these. The number of people that we've had here is unbelievable. There definitely is an interest in knowing what your peers are doing, or if they're doing anything. My hearts go out to all these guys that have been sitting at home. If they're getting paid, good for them. But the guys that aren't, that's terrible. And I have relayed that to my staff. I said, hey, and we see it here. Clark County guys were sitting at home on their butts. If they didn't have time on the books, they weren't getting paid. So it's good to see that and see this grow. I know we're going to push towards some academic stuff, which I think is fantastic as well. You know, guys are saying, hey, what can I do with, you know, I know questions that I might have. What can I do with a limited budget? How can I stretch this out? You only have so much money to deal with. I'm used to having, 50,000 for the next couple months for fertilization. Now they're giving me 6. Well, what do I do with that? How can that work? Anytime getting together, like John said, anytime getting different points of view from others within this group or outside the group or whatever, I think is a fantastic help. It's an outlet for everyone else too, to, and just a good chance to meet. I mean, I don't know many of you, but now I know a few more. So, it's another networking tool as well. So I think these town halls have been great, and I look forward to, being in a few more of them.
That's awesome. We do have about 75 more people here. As far as any more questions that we have from the group, any more comments that we have here before we wrap up here? We're about 4 minutes to the top of the hour, so just want to give everybody one more opportunity to chime in. James, great group and discussion. Thank you to everyone. So that's from James Bergdahl. But no, if there's nothing else here that I see coming in on the chat, I do want to thank everybody on the panel. It was a really, really great discussion. Thank our technology committee members for putting these together and all the work it took to secure panelists and everything like that. President Simpson and the board, they've been really, really supportive of this whole endeavor, and really, really proud of what we've done. And we're grateful for it as a group and as a committee. So Kristen Althouse and Kim Heck from STMHQ, they have put in a ton of time, hard work and labor in making sure that these go off without a hitch, and very, very appreciative and grateful for what those ladies have done. So with that, I just want to say thank you. We look forward to our next virtual town hall, which is going to be Tuesday, July 14th at 3 p.m. We'll be interacting with a group of panelists regarding best field management practices. Please look for details on this and future town halls on our association website at stma.org, at Field Experts on social media, and in your email inbox. So with that, thank you to everyone for your participation today. Be well and stay safe.
Thank you.